Okay, so this is the time-lapse version of the Full Metal Jacket helmet install. It's sped up about 5 times speed, so you can kind of get the gist of the information without having to drag through all the hours long worth of details. But it is a pretty short video, the full version. So now I'm just covering over the different things that I'm using. So this is talking about primer 94 and also 3M knifeless finishing tape. So this stuff's really handy for doing cuts on the material. And I'm also talking about the X-Acto knife and squeegee. So I'm going into details about the squeegee and also the sleeve of the squeegee. There's a lot of different ones you can buy online. So now I'm talking about the jig, and the jig is basically your work holding device. So you can't hold this with your knees or your hands because you need both hands when you're installing it. And on my previous pink helmet, I used a table saw stand just because it was big and it was heavy. I know most people don't have table saws, so I'm kind of showing in this one how to set up a jig with 2x4s. And so here I'm applying the primer 94 after I wipe down the helmet. The primer 94 only takes about 5 minutes to dry, so now I'm just talking about the wrap material and how they're laid out and how I'm cutting out the pieces. I'm also talking a little bit about how I use finishing tape and also keep your hands wiped down so you don't have any sweat or oils on your hands. And so here I'm showing the Harbor Freight heat gun. I normally leave this on medium. I think that heat gun's around $25. So now I'm setting up the knifeless finishing tape for the first cut. The material will wrap over to the halfway point of the helmet, and then you kind of pull this knifeless tape up like dental floss, and it does a clean cut without having to endanger using the blade against the edge of the helmet. So now I'm looking at applying the piece onto the helmet, and the way it lays on there is kind of important because there's that black band that's holding in the ammo and the playing card and the matches, and that has to be a certain area above the edge of the helmet because I don't want that graphic to be cut off. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of taping it up in the correct position. I'm making sure, that's why I'm holding my fingers down and peeling back and just kind of looking at it so I can make sure that it's located. I think it's around 1/4 inch from the edge of the helmet. So most wrap people, if they're doing small objects like this, you have to kind of tape it off and then do half and then come back and do the other half. And the reason you do that is it allows you to position it properly. And so here you can see that I've got the back half taped down with 2 pieces of tape, so it's kind of staying steady. And then I'm still looking and making sure that that band is where I want it to be. So just kind of looking at that. There's some wrinkles there. At this point, I'm not really too much worried about the wrinkles. I'm just wanting to get mostly located properly. And then so the back, I'm going to do the same thing, but I believe I get the heat gun out here, yeah. And there's a little bit more. I didn't really do it in half. The back half is kind of like 2/3. So what I'm doing now is I'm kind of heating up around the middle point, so when I stretch it back, it allows me to pull out some of the wrinkles. And that's the way vinyl wraps sort of work. If you're wrapping a curved surface, you're going to wind up with wrinkles if you don't stretch it in certain areas. So that stretching along the middle area of the wrap is what gives its ability to kind of more so lay flat. So now I am kind of going back, and that I mostly have all the band area flat. Now I'm just kind of going up through the top and working through and making sure it's laying flat. Now because it's a compound radius, so this is you've got a curve going from left to right and a curve going from top to bottom. Because of that, and because it's such an aggressive curve, you know, it's not like the hood of a car or something like that. Because of that, you do have to do relief cuts. And so when we design these helmets, we often set up the sides to be 2 sides and then a middle piece. But because of the way this design was set up, its top piece is basically camo. So I knew that we'd be able to cut it and just do relief cuts there. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm just laying down a flat portion, stretching it out and cutting it, and then doing a sort of an overlap after I do a cut. So I call these relief cuts, and it basically just allows you to get rid of the wrinkled areas. I've still got a little bit of wrinkles there in the front I'm going to have to deal with, but for the most part it's done. And so now I'm going along to the bottom edge, repositioning the camera there. And so now I'm talking about the thing with the bottom is you don't really have to do relief cuts with it. It's mostly in the same plane. It does curve from left to right, but the bottom edge is so close to it that you don't really have to do much to get rid of those relief cuts. And so you can see on the left hand side it looks like there's wrinkles, but it's actually wrinkles that's in the print, those dark shadows there. So now I'm using the knifeless finishing tape. It's a lot like dental floss inside of like a green translucent tape, and so you wind up pulling up that dental floss like stuff, and it cuts the helmet, or it cuts the material without having to use a razor blade on it. And so if you did cut it, let's say you just cut it with a razor blade and then you laid or let's say you just cut the first one with a razor blade, you could scratch the helmet. And so that's kind of why knifeless finishing tape was invented. And so now I'm just cutting with my X-Acto knife along the bottom and getting those creases and everything looking good. And now this is what a professional detailer does, so, and I do it too. If you're getting ready to do an overlap seam, I like to clean it again with alcohol, because you may have touched it with your fingers, which have oils on it, and you want to get the best bond that you can there. And then I'm actually going on the other side of the wrap and applying like a little 1/4 inch area of primer 94 to get it to hold there even more. So I've got my pieces of masking tape setting up there on the rack that kind of helps me be able to easily grab that one-handed, and when I have the wrap in position I can grab it. And so yeah, that primer 90 or the knifeless finishing tape is put about 1/4 inch from the edge, and that allows you to have overlap. So anytime you're making a seam with vinyl, you do have to have a little bit of overlap. And so now I'm basically doing to the left side what I did to the right side, or my right side, and that was the placing of the front area first and then doing the back half. So again, heating it up. So you don't have to heat it up a ton, you just want enough to where it will stretch. And so there's a wide range of where it will not stretch at all to where it'll stretch a ton before the wrap is damaged. And so I like to just barely warm it up. It's not like I'm doing like a whole big section, it's just a small helmet, so you don't have to warm it up too much. So now I'm just talking about some of the details there. We got a lot of wrinkles on top still, so I like to lay down kind of the midpoint without wrinkles, and then once it's all tacked up and everything, go back and get the upper wrinkles. And so here I'm talking about how there's some text that says "Born to Kill," and there's also like a peace symbol button up there. And so those are key elements to the graphics. Those have to be flat. So I'm not going to do any cuts around those letters. What I'm going to do is I'm talking about cutting to the left and right of those letters after I lay it down flat to do my relief cut. So you can see I'm just to the right of that peace symbol and heating it up there and getting that to lay flat. And so that's going to allow there to not be any weird seams or anything going across that text or that button. So you do have to kind of plan out when you're doing wraps sometimes a little bit with stuff like that. So now I'm just doing the top. It's we're getting pretty close to the end here. I appreciate y'all sticking around. And so same thing, just kind of laid it flat up to a little bit past the B in born, and then did a relief cut and kind of stretched that over and laid it flat. And so now whenever you're cutting through multiple pieces, because I did relief cuts, sometimes the knifeless finishing tape doesn't cut through it as easy, so you have to kind of be more forceful with it. And so I'm just peeling away the tape and the extra pieces there. and just make sure and pressing it in hard. So that's pretty crucial to make sure you get a good bond. So did the same thing here. I pushed in the crease with a squeegee and my thumb and got it real close to the edge, and then used that as a guide for the X-Acto, and then going back and pressing it out again. So it's at this point it's looking pretty good. We're at the end. I'm talking about some of the finish details and talking about how I'm gonna cut out the back here. There's a little vent area for the helmet. So yeah, that's pretty much the video. I hope you enjoyed it. And oh, there's one more thing here. I'm kind of heating up these, they're like buttons or rivets for the helmet. So I'm just heating those up because you're wanting to press in deep around the creases of the helmet, and so that's of the buttons, and then so that's why I'm using that for the heat gun to get it pressed in really hard. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and there's a full version of the video that you can check out as well. So thanks for watching.